We're up to our entire interview with Mark Farner. I think this is maybe the 7th time we've talked to him. He was the guiding light, the main lead singer of Grand Funk, chief songwriter, lead guitarist, 3-man band, along with Don Brewer on drums and Mel Shacker on bass guitar. They had a lot of hits. Bad Time to Be in Love, Some Kind of Wonderful, We're an American Band. In this, our entire interview will give you recaps of how he wrote Bad Time to Be in Love. It's quite a story. His problem with the Beatles, wanting to get back with Grand Funk for one final tour, that bad manager, Terry Knight, who stole a lot of money from the band, and a lot more. He's quite a gentleman. He's one of my favorite interviews. Mark Farner on Rock History Music.
Hello, hello.
Hello, John.
There you are. Okay, perfect.
Here we are at long last.
Hold on a second. I feel like I'm broadcasting.
You, babe.
It's my favorite guy to interview right there.
All right.
You are the man. Anyway, how you been? I know there's more stuff on Farner Chords, which is kind of exciting. Tell me about that.
Well, it keeps going. The people are receiving it, brother, because it's me making the chords that other people have tried to show, instructional videos on YouTube, and they were all a little off, God bless them for trying. I mean, some great players. And I thought, well, why the hell didn't I play it that way? It would have been a lot easier. But no, my chords are just Farner chords. It's the way I did it. And because it's free, people love that. And that the reaction to just that part alone, Brother John, has been phenomenal. Because everybody's wanting to, how do they say that? Monetize everything that they're doing. So to get something for free, I guess it's a real treat.
Well, going back to you guys in the beginning, a people's band, the fact that it's for the people. And I was reading some of the reviews, how, there's always they hated Zeppelin. They didn't like Zeppelin. They hated a lot of people, but look,
who's Kiss? All the critics did,
Yeah.
They don't even like the people. What the hell do we want?
No, it's nice that you're doing this. I think that it's another way of getting closer to the fans too, because they're getting it from you, the way you meant it, right?
Yeah, man. Closer to the fans, closer to my home.
Yeah. Do you think with Jan Wenner, they say he's been kicked out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the board? Do you think that will make a difference? Do you think that, I always think of you guys in there.
Well, in the first place, you gotta just cipher that out. Who are they that are saying? They say. Is that mainstream saying that by chance? Those lying ass, no good scum sucking pig dogs?
You're getting in next year for sure.
Yeah, it's smoke and mirrors, brother. Yeah, it's politics, and politics stink. It's only rock and roll that keeps us together as a community.
Do you any new movement with Mel and?
I pray for them. I pray for those guys every day. They're part of my prayer ritual. They're just off their path, Brother John. And it's easy to get off the path. So many people got off the path. I'll be 75 on the 29th.
And you look good.
I've earned control of my music. Thank you.
What the heck?
Yeah, man.
Speaking of prayer comes up. You prayed for Closer to Home, I'm Your Captain. That's one you prayed for. Did you know at that point, were you solidified in your faith enough to know that you'd get something? Where were you at when you asked for it?
No, brother. Back then I prayed because my mother showed us to pray, and I prayed for the fire insurance. You know, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
Yeah.
If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. These things I ask in Jesus' sake. And then I would bless all the family, everybody it would come to mind. I'd ask God to bless them. Now in the end, I did a little PS on it. And I said, PS, God, would you please give me a song that would reach and touch the hearts of those you want to get to? I did not have a clue that that was an answer to prayer when I got up and wrote that song. I was not in a conscious state of mind. I was in a semi-conscious state, somewhere suspended between heaven and earth. I was there, and I think all songwriters go there, and we bob for songs as they're going by. And I started writing the words, and it sounded crazy to me as I'm going, but I knew better. Something within me, I was reluctant to go back to the top and start reading. Like songwriters, we'll write a verse, and then to link it together, we'll write a second verse that goes with that first verse. So there's an order to things, and we say it in such a way, and we might take verse 3 and swap it out with verse 2 after we get done, because there's an order that has to go in. But I knew better than to go back to the top and start reading that song again, brother. I had to stay with it. And by the time I finished the last words, I was so exhausted. It was like I couldn't hardly stay awake anymore. And I just put this steno pad I had, I put it back on the nightstand. I grabbed that sheet. I threw it back over me, and I was gone, man, like a turkey through the corn the day before Thanksgiving, man. I was out.
You put it all out there.
Yes. Until the morning when I got up and grabbed my guitar in the kitchen. I had a George Washburn that was a fine instrument, and it was an American-made acoustic guitar, and I started playing. You know, I said, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And I go, and I reach over and grab this C. I was going for the G, and I went short and grabbed a C instead. I'd never heard this C. I didn't even know it existed till I played it, but it had a nice chime to it. The harmonics rang out, and then that kitchen, kitchens are great to jam in with an acoustic guitar. And I'm looking at the horses out in the pasture. I got a coffee on the table, man. Things are great. And when I hit that, it was like, those words, maybe it's a song. I go get them, and I start playing, and I recorded it on my little Sony. I hit the red button on that cassette recorder, and there I played it. And I took the song to rehearsal that day and played it for Don and Mel. And we put that song together that day, assembling, when that, am I in my cabin dreaming? That it had to have a breakdown. People say that song sounds like it was 3 different songs that you put together. Well, it was. I mean, it was just the way it happened. It was just the dream. It was just the way that lyric turned out, and just the way God wanted it. And just so happens that a lot of our veterans, especially the Vietnam veterans who were active at the time, they got a hold of that music, and brother, they held on to the hope that they found in the words of getting closer to my home and return me to my home port. I had none of that was even registering until I wrote the song, took it to the kitchen table, took it to rehearsal. We recorded it. And Tommy Baker, who did the orchestration for that, was the song leader on the Upbeat show in Cleveland, Ohio. And he was going to do the all that instruments and the chorus out and all the outro of the violins and all of the things that come in, the French horns and the things that he was hearing. He says, Farner, man, he says, when you get to the end of that song, he says, go and go and go and go and go. And when you can't go no more, give me 10 more bars. And I'm going, okay, buddy. And so
Goosebumps.
Yeah. So I said to the guys in the studio, I said, Tommy wants us to just give him all we got it. And we gave it to him. And it was just enough. It was just enough to have the beautiful orchestration that came from his mind. And I think under the inspiration of the creator who gave me the lyrics. I take no credit for this song. I take the royalties, songwriter's royalties. Terry Knight's estate takes the publishing. But I was only 20. My mom had to sign the contract between Terry Knight and myself. She didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I had no representation, legal representation. And that's where young musicians make their mistakes. They need to have an attorney. Even if they can't afford one, they need to get somebody who is in their court representing them so that they don't get taken advantage of the way we got taken advantage of.
Bad Time to Be in Love. I know. Was it the result, if I remember correctly, of a little spat in the kitchen?
It was coming from the kitchen. I was sitting at my little, I had a, it was an electric, kind of like a spinet piano, but you could hear it acoustically, but it was electrified, and it was just a shorter, smaller version. They tried to make it portable for the day. If you transported that thing, it changed with the temperature. I mean, the tuning on it changed. So I said, I'll just leave it in the house and play it, and it'll stabilize and it'll stay in tune. And it did that. And I sat down to it because had some words with my first wife, and I'm sitting there and I'm just playing these chords, and if you're not feeling very good, your chords might be minors. Might be D minor. And I hear the words coming from the kitchen of the threat of putting a 12-inch cast iron skillet through my forehead. I went, ooh, damn, this is a bad time to be in love, man. It's like, and so out it came. And I didn't mind singing it out loud.
Are you sure?
Oh, it had to come out. But then when I transferred it to guitar, and I told Craig Frost, I said, it's got to have bump, 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 bump. It's got to have that underneath this. He says, okay, you want chords? I said, no, octaves, just octaves. Bump, that note, those notes. And so I'm playing the guitar and he's playing that part. I said, oh yeah, that'll work. You just do that, and you do the stabs on the B3 and on 2 and 4. Bam, bam, bam. And it just kept a nice little rhythm through that whole thing. And I on stage, I got keyboard players that feel it, and they can do it the same as the record, and we sing it with I've got 3 guys that can sing, and so we do the harmonies. And I love doing Bad Time because so many people, man, that was played more than any other song in 1975. And you see people out there singing the words to it. A lot of guys took heart to that. I guess there was lot of women that wanted to put a cast iron skillet through their husband's head around those days.
What was her reaction to it? She obviously found out. Your first wife?
It's just rolling of the eyes. Rolling eyes.
Come on. By the way, was that like dun, 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 was when I first heard that song, I remember thinking it's got a sort of a 50s vibe underneath it. But am I wrong?
No, it's but it wasn't taken from anything from the 50s. It just had that syncopation.
That vibe to me. Yeah. We're an American band 50 years. We've talked about this last time, the fact that, the band's doing the 50-year thing of that album. Going into that record, what's your recollection of at that point? 1973, it was like a year of Dark Side of the Moon, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. There was so many albums out there.
Yeah. Well, back then, of course, the music, people ask me, what is the big difference, the biggest difference between the music then and the music nowadays? Well, I don't listen to the radio. I don't watch TV. I kind of stay away from what's happening now because it's all digitized. It's played to a click track. It's synchronized. When you make a mistake, or if the drummer's playing a little bit behind, well, you can quantize that shit and fix it, brother. The robot will play it for you perfectly. I'm not into that. The music then had an honesty to it that the music today lacks. I'm just talking the sound, where it's coming from. Back then when the drummer sped up or slowed down, it was in the grooves. It was accepted, and it was part of what made the music so lovable and why people love the music from the late 60s and 70s and up through the 80s until they started using the click track and digitizing and synchronizing and all this crap that they've done to the music. But back then, when that music was released, people were in a more humble, free state of mind. Because back then, of course, the disc jockeys, we looked to them for leadership, for the next, new music they were going to bring us. And they never let us down, man. I mean, because it was moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas that owned all the networks back then. And there was a moral conscience over what our children were seeing and hearing. The media has been robbed from the people, and it's been taken over by large corporations, as you know, Brother John.
Well, speaking of that, I'm kind of curious, when you were growing up, were your parents plugged into what was going on?
My dad, World War II veteran, tank driver in the 7th Armored Division, returned home with 4 bronze medals. He was in 4 major battles, and he lived to come home and work as a fireman in the city of Flint, Michigan. And I remember walking behind him, brother. Him and my Uncle Woody were out bird hunting, ringneck pheasant. And I'm back behind him because I would just tag along, because I love to be with him. And I heard my dad say to Uncle Woody, because they're talking politics and whatever, and what was in the Flint Journal. And my dad looks at Woody. He says, "You believe that shit?" He says, "I'm going to tell you something. If you really want to know where the trouble starts, trace that money trail to the top." That, my friend, that stuck with me. I was only 8 years old back then, 7, 8 years old, but those words have stuck with me because that truth is setting me free today, because I know that's where the trouble starts. Those people have an agenda.
By the way, did your parents, how did they react to what was going on? I mean, you guys were the biggest band in that era, that span of years. I mean, no one's touching you guys. So how did your parents, I mean, they knew they obviously knew you could sing and you could play guitar, but when, and I mean, I read the quote where you guys were using snow to shave and to drink and just before it broke out. But after that, we'll get to that in a second, but after that, when you couldn't turn a corner without hearing about you guys, how did they react?
Well, my dad died when I was 9 years old, my father.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Frederick Farner. And my mom remarried about 2 years after that to Reginald Russell Fortune, a great guy from Flint, Michigan. And I brought my mom and Pedge, which was his nickname because his brother couldn't say Reginald. He called him Pedge. So my mom, Betty, and Pedge came to New York City to watch us at Madison Square Garden. We were doing 3 shows back to back, all sold out for the Phoenix House, which back then we just felt like we were compelled to help them rescue a lot of the Vietnam veterans that were coming home that were hooked on heroin. A lot of them, man, they were, just down and out. So with the money that we raised, over $500,000, we started 7 Phoenix houses in New York City. And my mom and my stepdad, Pedge, were there. And it was my mom. After the show, she came up to me. She had tears running down her face. She said, "Son, you're doing so good. I am so proud of you and what you guys are doing for the veterans. Oh my God, your dad would just go through the roof with joy." And that made me cry, buddy. And it's almost got me right now.
Yeah. Well, considering where your dad came from, I mean, he was obviously a great man, and there you are, repaying the service,
Yeah, man.
That's the way it's done. By the way, speaking of the using the snow to shave or whatever, is that what you guys were doing when you were that poor before?
Well, that whole thing, melting down snow, listen, we had never seen the ocean before, right? We're from Michigan. We're these young kids, 19 years old, out there in summer cottages on Cape Cod. Everything froze up. The pipes froze up. First it melted. The snow was melted down in the crawl space where we put all of these starfish and sea biscuits and all of these shells, because it's the first time we ever been to the ocean. We were going to take some of this back to Michigan with us. Dude, it all got froze into that ice. We had to leave it behind. We didn't pull one starfish out of there. So we're melting down, and we only have oatmeal. No sugar, nothing but oatmeal, no butter or anything to put on it, no syrup, oatmeal. We had a little salt, so a little salt and oatmeal, but it was good for us to get to that point where we were all surviving together and we were all dependent on the sanity of the next person to keep us zeroed into that sanity. Oh yeah, we're gonna work our way through this, but we got to eat more oatmeal until that happens. Brother, we had an old chair that didn't have a bottom in it. It was a kitchen chair, wooden chair. We would line the sacks that we got from the East Sandwich grocer with plastic, and we'd take that chair in the bathroom. Hey, what a great place to take a shit, right? In the bathroom. And we would do it in that plastic lined paper bag, roll it up, and out it went, someplace buried in a snowbank. each guy would do his own little thing, make his own little trail out there and deposit. And I thought, oh, I would have hated to been the dude for spring cleanup around there, you know? Oh my gosh. It was bad. It was bad, but it was good for the soul. Bad for the band because when we got home, Brother John, two of the guys were married. Craig Frost, who eventually became keyboard player for Grand Funk. His wife was threatening divorce. He had to quit. Kenny Rich, our guitar player from Canada, his wife, same deal, made him quit the band. And Rod Lester, who was playing bass at the time, he wasn't married, but the gal was not real happy with him that he was living with. So there we were, Don and I. And when he, said, well, what are we going to do? I said, dude, we should start a 3-piece band. And they can't be married. They can't even have girlfriends, okay? We don't want the women ruining our band. And we went up and we were at Delta Promotions in Bay City, which was the outfit that sent us out to the East Coast in the first place, told us that if we did good on this promotional tour, it was pitched to us as a promotional tour. It said, if you do good, we can go back and charge money. We didn't know that we were getting paid $350 a show. That came out later, and then we were really pissed. So we went to give them a piece of our mind and find out what happened to that money. And we're in the outer offices waiting for our turn to get in to talk to Kehoe, the head honcho. And it's a rehearsal facility too, and a recording facility at Delta Promotions at that time. And Question Mark and the Mysterians was in rehearsing. We didn't know it was them. We could just hear a band in there. And I'm hearing the bass coming through the walls, and I said, Brewer, man, you listening to this bass player? He says, yeah, how could I not listen to him? That's all that's coming through is the bass and the kick drum. I said, he can play. He said, yeah, man, let's find out who that is. Well, when they took a break, Mel Shocker comes walking out, and I go, Melvin. He goes, Mark, man. It's like, we went to the same school together. We hung out together. We jammed together. We smoked pot together, rode dirt bikes. I mean, we were buddies. And when I told him what we were up to, he said, man, this must be from God, because I'm having a hard time in this band right now. And I would be happy to join you guys. And we started rehearsal the next week, Brother John, in Flint, Michigan, at the Flint Federation of Musicians on Averill Street there. And Frank Guy, I'll never forget him. I can remember him coming out, and he's going like this. He's going, boys, turn that down. We can't even hear the phones ringing in here. Yeah, well, we wrote the music there. They'd go take a break and go get the food, burgers or whatever, get some lunch, and I would write the words to the song. I would be jamming a jam. They go, what's that? It's a jam, you guys. It's a jam. Do you have lyrics? No, but I'll have them by the time you get back. So that's how it happened. Most of the first album was exactly like with the exception of Heartbreaker. And Heartbreaker was the first song I'd ever written. And that was right after Dick Wagner went to bed. We were at his apartment. We were just after a show that we'd done in Michigan at the Lakeland Castle in Caseville, Michigan. And we drove, a couple, 3 hours to get back down to Saginaw. And when you drive that long after a show, you're not ready to go to bed. You're geeked. You want to jam. So Dick and I sat out in his living room. His wife and kids were asleep in the bedrooms down the hall. And we played our electric guitars with no amplifiers, of course. So, playing an electric guitar, a slab of wood with strings on. It's not very loud, but he's showing me some chords and everything. And at that moment in time, I said, Wagner, how do you write all these songs, dude? You know, he's got a book of songs by this time, and they're great songs. And I've been watching the Bossman for years, and I'm part of the Bossman now. So I get to sit with one of my guitar heroes and ask him how he does it. He reaches over, Brother John, and he touches me right in the chest, and he goes, they're right in there. And he hit me right there. I said, in there? He says, they come from in there, brother. They come from your heart. And that's where they, you know, he says, you can write songs. I said, I can? I can? It's like, it was, he stuck the key in the hole and he turned it, brother. Just giving me the confidence, because I thought so much of him that by him saying that to me, it unlocked Heartbreaker. I sat up and I started, because it was, you know, 2-3 hour drive. It had to be 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And there I am sitting there, kind of melancholy, kind of winding down now. I'm not buzzed up and ready to learn new chords. I'm ready to feel blue. And so I played blue, and I, you know, it was, it all came out like that. And I showed it to Wagner the following morning. When he got out of bed, I said, man, I cannot wait to show you. I wrote a song last night. He said, you did? I said, yes, man. I played it for him. He helped me arrange it. He said, I think it should be a little longer, you know, put a little break in there. And like the guitar lead that I do on stage, he says, and then come back with the chorus. And yes, that's great, man. And so from that day on, we put it in our set as the Bossman. I played Heartbreaker for the people in Michigan and Ohio and Illinois and Indiana where we would play. And they loved that song. They just loved that song.
Well, it was one of the singles too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But when we did it with the Bossman, we had 3 great voices for harmony behind me singing. Those guys were singing harmony. It was killer. It was just killer. And Wagner was so proud that I picked up on what he was imparting to me. He gave me a gift.
That's amazing. The fact that it's, like you said, it's like turning it, let it all out, man. You can do it. Rite of passage, permission, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, man.
Well, by the way, I was watching some videos this morning of you guys on stage, and I'm going, man, I mean, you're still in great shape, but you were cut, man. You're like, geez. I was telling my son he works out almost every day. And he's like a big muscle guy, but not big. You know what I mean? But yeah. Did you exercise a lot back then?
No, it was, you know, exercise was a stage show, and I farmed. I was baling hay, you know, throwing hay, and you putting hay bales on a conveyor. And then when you get up in the hay mow and you're throwing, you don't have a shirt on. Forget about that shirt. I mean, it would just slow you down. And we would take a hose and rinse the chaff of the hay off, or go jump in the lake across the street, you know, take your clothes off and dive off the tailgate of the pickup into the deepest part of the lake, you know. Yeah, it was, that was a good lifestyle. I still live a farm lifestyle, but I don't bale hay like I used to, but I'm shoveling, I'm cutting firewood with a chainsaw, stacking wood, you know, splitting wood, doing things that takes physical activity to do. And I don't walk from one place on the farm to the next place, or I don't, you know, just jump on a dirt bike and ride. I run over to the next place. I run down to the garden. I run back to the house. I run out into the woods. I run down to the shooting range. And, you know, because singers have to keep our air up. You know, that's probably the biggest thing. The endurance comes from being able to last and sing the long notes, sing them out just like you did on the record. They don't want a little short note. They want all of that note to come out. The fans appreciate that so much, brother.
Where did you learn to phrase? I've always liked your phrasing. There's I mean, I always heard, like, to me, like, you're a rocker, you're an R&B'er, but I love the way you phrased your lyrics. So who taught you that, unconsciously or consciously?
It's unconscious, because I did not purpose in my heart, well, I'm going to do it this way today, because it just, I heard somebody. I did take a lot of tips from Howard Tate, the way Howard Tate sang. When he would sing a note, he would always like, hey, instead of hey, he'd just do a little push on it. Hey, and it would emphasize. So I took some of that because I love Howard Tate's singing, man.
You voice, introduced me to him. It was you.
Yeah, his phraseology. And it's just the ease that it comes out with when you mean it, and the soul that accompanies the lyric and the tone of your voice is it's in control of all of that. If it doesn't sound right, I mean, somebody that's a great vocal coach is somebody who's sitting back and they're in the studio with you and you're saying something. And they don't want you to restructure everything because they want you to feel it. So they take what you're doing and give you a little tidbit here, a little tidbit there. And that's all it takes, is just a little fine adjustment, because with that, we take every criticism as this big, or every pointer, it's like, oh my God, so it only takes a little bit. You can wear somebody out having them do a take on a song. Like I know people have told me, oh man, I sang that thing 47 times. I'm thinking 47 times. Are you shitting me? I'd have died, because you lose the character. The character needs to be expressed. It needs to be part of the song as an actor acts out the part, and you see. But in a song, it's your imagination that is developing this character that you're seeing with your eyes closed. And with that in mind, I always sang on the microphone with my eyes closed, becoming the character I am trying to portray with the lyrics and with the melody that I'm singing to the people.
When you explain things, I was just telling someone the other day, I said, when I interview Mark, I feel what he's saying, as opposed, I got to tell you, when you were outside, you were looking at, you got the character builder out of the fact that, you didn't have a lot of money. A lot of people would look at that and not, I mean, maybe unconsciously they'll get the message that I appreciate what I got now because I know what the other side is and I've lived it. Don't think I don't know that side. I know it.
Yeah, brother.
I think when you were at Shea Stadium, that was just like it's like all the stars are in alignment. You earned it. You didn't have a big hit. That's amazing what you guys did, but you had the fans. They believed in you. When you were up there, did you ever think of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, considering their past there?
We knew that we'd sold it out in a shorter time period.
Yep.
But we knew that they were hamstrung by the PA system that they called the game on. It wasn't made to play rock music on, brother. And so they were hamstrung by that. And I felt for them because, man, here we had a great big PA system. We had lights, it was the same guy. What was his name for the did Woodstock. He did I can't remember his name, but he did the lights for our show. Steph Graff was talking about it the other day. It's funny you should mention that. But we had a PA system that was killer, man. It was loud and it had fidelity. We were not breaking the speakers up. The only thing that was breaking up is when I would kick on my Jimi Hendrix fuzz tone in my Messenger guitar, and then it was breaking up, man. It was in a beautiful way. So yeah, we had a little advantage as far as the sound goes, but the popularity, I think people then were expressing and congregating to what love was drawing us all to. And because the topic in most of my songs, I'm leading people to think about, to consider love, the love in things, and from a loving point of view, and not railing against or trying to anger anybody, but just to inform people. That was appreciated by that New York audience. It was really appreciated. And I believe that those people that showed up, they slept on the lawn. Dude, the only place you could get a ticket was at the ticket office. 55,000 seats were sold from that ticket office, and a bunch of them, thousands, slept on the lawn in the neighborhood that night before, in their tents, sleeping bags. They were just out there. They wanted to be the first in line. So with that advantage that we had, I couldn't compare, because I love the Beatles, man. They were one of my bands, and I could never figure why they wouldn't get back together for the sake of the fans, why they couldn't just bury the hatchet, why they were all still sucking air. I wanted to see them, and maybe it was selfish on my part, Brother John, but I said, damn, just do it for us, man. So when it comes to people, when they ask me, you think Grand Funk will ever get back together? I just, I have been trying for 24 years, but it's not up to me, because those other two guys are 2/3 of the corporation that controls that trademark. And even though it's been kind of hard sometimes, difficult, I still pray for them, because that's the only thing that's going to get. It's not saying bad things about them, because the fans have said enough bad things. I don't have to say bad things about it. But any bands that don't have the original players, but they still use the original title of the band,
Foreigner.
yeah, and I don't see why don't we have some kind of a website that gives a star rating, and if you see the name of that band, go to this website and check out who's still in the band. Why isn't there why isn't there somebody?
Are you seeing the band? Are you actually seeing the band? Yeah.
Yeah, that tells the truth about what you're going to go see. Who's left, who is it, and who's presenting it, and who's behind this presentation, and where, if there's any information available, where are the original members now? Then people could make an informed decision on whether they're going to go see this band or not, or maybe they go see just because they like the music, no matter who's playing it. A lot of these bands that are what do they call them? Tribute bands.
Tribute bands, yeah.
They have great audiences, because, man, the people love the music, dude. That's it. So it wouldn't hurt, though, to have a little truth available.
See, Wiki has that, but you've got to click too many things to figure it out. I mean, you're doing math, you're looking at dates, you're having to look at albums, your favorite album, then you go back to who's in the band now. That's just too much clicking. Yeah. You can't do that.
No.
My son is quite a serious musician, but his guitarist wants to ask you these just two questions. Ask Mark why he never used big guitar amplifier brands like Gibson, Marshall, Fender through widely accessible at the time. Why he didn't? Okay, that's the question.
Okay. Well, I am kind of a home state guy. I was born in Michigan, Flint, Michigan. I have stayed in Michigan all my life. I could have moved. People were trying to get me to move to Nashville because it's 10 hours to Dallas, 10 hours to New York City, 10 hours to Detroit, centrally located for touring. Just think of the miles you'll save, the money in fuel you'll save, they say to me. And I said, but I don't have a love for, I got people in Michigan. I got family in Michigan. I got Michigan in Michigan. It's right here, brother. That's exactly right, Brother John. I got trout streams. I got to fish. There's, there's just things that keep me here. So that being said, when I knew that West Amps was, available, and how would I know this? Well, because I worked at the factory putting West Amps together. I put speakers in cabinets. I soldered on the circuit boards. I did the traces. I made the hookups. I did every part of building those West amplifiers. And when I worked for Dave West, and so did Dennis Bellinger, who was the bass player on the Grand Funk albums, What's Funk and Grand Funk Lives in 81 and 82. And, with that, every time we took a break, we were playing these amplifiers, and I would go and set on the drums. If the other guys, that were working the factory, they would play guitar and bass, and then I'd go out and I'd play guitar, then I'd play bass, and, we all kind of swapped around, and I loved what those big 15-inch speakers sounded like. I said, man, this is what a guitar needs to sound like. This is what I play through today, brother. When I backline, when we are flying all over the country, all over the world, I have 15-inch speaker enclosures that I play through, and I use Fender amps because that's closest thing I could get to a West. And the West is not available in every city, the same like a Fender Twin or a Fender Deluxe or a Fender Super is, or a Bassman. But we use, when you fly, you got a backline, and there's all these backline companies now who supply all of our instruments, the keyboards, the drums, everything. Our drummer brings his own pedals and his sticks and what have you. But everything else is backlined, except for, of course, I carry my axe. I carry Betty, my guitar tech from Cleveland. He carries Ruby, and she's my backup. And then Paul, he carries his bass from Detroit, Paul Randolph. And our keyboard player from St. Augustine, Mark Hoyt, he was carrying his little Hammond, but now you can backline them, and so we don't have to take a chance of something getting broken in transport. The backline companies always keep their gear up, and we always get pretty good sound out of it. So as long as I got my 15s, I'm playing it. But that all came from playing the 15s and getting started with the West amps, and we carried those amps to Europe with us, brother. We had those big containers that went under the bellies of the 747s. Yeah. We carried 17,000 pounds of PA with us over to Europe, and our speakers, and it held up. So, God rest Dave West's soul, but I did not care for Marshall amplifiers. I played through them. I tried to play through them, and I only lasted maybe 2 or 3 chords. And I said, this cannot achieve the sound that I like, that I use. But I can get it through a Fender amplifier. I can get that song, the sound of the songs that I made. And I use my old 1970s stomp boxes. I got a $35 chorus, an Arian stereo chorus, That's a plastic, they call it a piece of crap, but it's the best chorus, man. I love that chorus. And it's been with me for years and years and years. And I use my pedals. I got a volume pedal. My guitar is wired wide open. It has no volume controls on it. Just because when I'm playing, sometimes I hit those knobs. Well, none of the knobs mean anything to my guitar because it's all wide open inside. It's just wired, full blown, all you can get out of it. And that's, through my amplifier system, that's what I use, and I get virtually the same sound every place I go.
He also asked one last one. This guy he says Mark had just the most wonderful guitars. He says he chose this army look. He said, was it one that you had that was dark green? That do you remember that one?
Yeah. You see that messenger back there? That's her. That is the messenger, and we call her the messenger. I forget the name of the company, but Music Craft, that's it. Music Craft Messenger. And in the bottom, below the knobs there is the last switch is my fuzz tone, Jimi Hendrix. I would reach back. I could be all the way across the stage from my position where my foot pedal was. And I had my double coil cord that had the Canon plugs hooking it together. And I could reach down and hit that fuzz tone, and I could play my lead right there. And I didn't have to go back and stomp on a box. It was in the guitar. And that was a beautiful thing for that 20-year-old kid that liked to run around that stage and didn't like to be in one spot for very long.
When I was younger and I was getting into your music, I was like about, I think, 14. And I remember there was a girl who lived a few blocks away, and I was trying to, educate her and stuff like that. And she looked at me and went, yeah, that's the blonde hunk guy, shirtless and can play like nobody's business. Hello, I know who that is. Mark Farner, hello. I'll never forget that. So she gave you credit for looking good, but she also gave you credit for being good.
Awesome.
You talked about the garlic. Oh my God, Mark, I got so much response from the garlic. I couldn't believe it. All of a sudden, the video's going 10,000, 20,000. And I look at the comments, everyone's talking about garlic.
All right.
And they're saying, that's how you cook it. That's right. It's like I'm going, this guy's connecting on several levels, even with garlic, for God's sakes. That hit people, man.
Awesome. This is awesome, man.
But one of the guys who commented on the garlic said, he says, my brother met Terry, and he says, and I just read a story this morning who said the same thing. He says, he found him rather humorless. Did you find that about Terry Knight?
Well, unless he was cracking a joke, it wasn't funny. It was like we were at a supper, a dinner at this nice restaurant where Terry was sitting at the head of the table, where he always liked to sit. And one of the gals who helped him out with financing, she was a banker, God bless her. And she was at the table, and they were all having a little toddy, champagne and wine, whatever. And Terry took a patty of butter, and he put it in his napkin like this, and he pops it, and it goes whoosh, straight up, and it's stuck, ha ha ha. And he's like looking around to see if everybody is laughing at his little prank. So got a chuckle out of people, and I'm thinking, man, that's disrespectful. He stuck that greasy piece of butter to the ceiling right there. Man, who's going to clean that shit up? And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm looking over at him, and the waitress comes back, and she said, she's talking to him, and he looks over at her, and his glass of water sitting there. here comes that piece of butter down from the ceiling, and it hits in his water and splashes, and then everybody cracks up. Then it became funny. Like,
Oh,
where did that
God.
and his face went flush. It's like,
What's your opinion on other power trios like Mahogany Rush, James Gang, Triumph, Jimi Hendrix? Of course, they were a trio. Do you have opinions on other power trios?
yeah, man. It's fresh cream. I mean, that first album Cream came out with, oh my God. The tone, Clapton, yeah, that Gibson, through whatever amp he was playing through, it was the whip, man. And of course Hendrix, he was for me, he was my guitar god. I loved that he could make that guitar sing, he could make it cry, he could make it speak. It spoke to me. And and Rush, Geddy Lee, the voice, the sound of everything that as it came together, as that song came out, there was certain bands that had that anointing. It was like an anointing. It's like, Elvis had an anointing on him. The Beatles had an anointing on them. And we have, because it captures spiritually, it captures a part of us that brings to our focal point something we didn't even realize was within us, but the music helps bring it out.
Bill Simzik, I just, of the Eagles fame and James Gang and all that stuff, I just interviewed him, and just before we left, I said, wait, Bill. He says, okay, what? I says, who did you want to produce and never produce? And you know what he said? Big Country, of all things, from England. And then he said, but mostly Rush. I said, what? Bill Simzik producing? I was just floored, Mark. I said, what? He says, because I wanted to work with the best musicians in the world.
Yeah.
What was the best to you? What was the best decade of rock?
The best decade, as far as I'm concerned, was the 70s. Yeah, because it was coming out then. It was all without a click track. There's something to that. And the people owned the networks back then. You could play Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Ohio. You could ask for it, you could request it. And let me tell you something about that song, brother, that you may not know. And I don't know if you know that I play out of concert pitch. I'm not in 440. My concerts, my records, for the last 10 years, I've cut in A432. It's part of the solfeggio scale. The solfeggio scale was lost, and then this guy found it in 1971 and kind of reintroduced people, and the tone of things, like the color of things, it has to do with our well-being. And For Dead in Ohio, I'm listening to that song, and I'm tuned to 432 because it's speaking to me. And I got a guitar around my neck, brother, and I'm listening to this song because I want to pick up how he does that intro. And I start playing it. I went, are you kidding me? I'm in tune with their recording. They cut that thing in 432. It wasn't in A440. It was 432. And I don't know if maybe the guitar had just sagged to that point, because sometimes you play an acoustic guitar long enough and all the strings kind of take a little, they release a little bit and they're not right up to the tune. Maybe that could have happened, or that could have been intentional that they tuned to 432, because it's not that much. It's only 8 tiny little increments down to, 432. But that frequency is compatible with everything in nature. The 432, a guy I sent me a link, and he had a 15-inch driver in front of a kiddie pool on a deck, had a tone generator and an amplifier, and he kicked in A2, which is the second A on a piano up, still low, in front of this, with a 15-inch driver in front of this kiddie pool. It put chop on the water. I mean, it was just like, shh. I'm watching this. Then he turns it to 432. See, first the A440, chop. 432, same note, same decibels, 125. And brother, pain starts at 90. So 125 is just beyond pain. And it's glass. It's a sheet of glass. No movement whatsoever in that water. And I looked at that. I went, bing, the lights went on. All right. Because he said, after you view this link, call me. So I said, okay, you got my attention, man. What's up with this 432? Then he kind of explained it to me. He says, have you got a headstock tuner? And I said, yeah, I got an old headstock tuner. He says, can you detune it? And I said, yeah, you can go flat and sharp with it. And he says, go down to 432 with it and tune that acoustic guitar of yours and just, fall in love with it. And I hung up with him. I tuned that thing. And it was like, when you come into tune at 432, there's a little whistle that accompanies that note. It's a harmonic that you almost don't need a tuner if you can just fine tune into that whistle. So I get it down to 432, and it's not louder. I mean, how could it be louder? I'm not playing any harder on it, but it's more. It's filling this room that I'm in, and I'm playing in my kitchen. I'm thinking, my God, is it me? And so I grabbed my other guitar and I played, and I said, no, it's the tuning. And 432, brothers. Back then, we didn't know, but people, when I start playing that song in concert, they almost run to the stage. They get up, they're excited. They heard it in 432. I'm playing it to them in 432. There is an association beyond what our mind can even perceive of. It is something that is inner dimensional, and the music brings it out. And so I'm always in 432 now, and I recut I'm Your Captain Closer to Home in 432 with Mark Slaughter, and we did a drum map. And when Brewer sped up and then slowed down, because there was no click track, he would speed up, slow down, speed up. It was all over the place. If you look at it on a piece of paper, I'm going, oh my God, really? But we had a drummer in California who played to that map and played all the parts on the Ludwig drums, the same types that Don Brewer cut that track with, so that it can be, people can associate the sound of it, and now they can appreciate it in 432 when Same Game comes out.
Remember, make sure you subscribe to our channel, join our Patreon, get early access to our videos. You can make a donation to the channel. There's a link in the very top of the description. Buy a t-shirt, spread the word. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music.